right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Richmond Public Library. My name is Phil Shepard, and please, it's my pleasure to welcome to the Gellman Room the Chamber Music Society of Central Virginia. This is the 8th Gellman Room concert in this season of the concerts. Our next concert will be on March 2nd, Saturday at 2 p.m. That's going to be 2 weeks from now. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the room the Chamber Music Society of Central Virginia.
Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing today? Good, excellent. My name is James Wilson. I'm the Artistic Director of the Chamber Music Society of Central Virginia, and it's such a pleasure to be here with all of you on this beautiful February day. Not warm, but beautiful. First of all, I'd like to just thank the Richmond Public Library and their Gellman Room series, Ben Himmelfarb and Hannah Kilgore, for being so welcoming. Programming the concerts on this series for me is one of my joys as an artistic director. It's so exciting for me to be able to think about and present music in a library setting where all kinds of things are surrounding us, art, thought, literature. So I always try to incorporate something else, some kind of other arts into the concerts that we do here. And today it's music and words, and I'll get to that in a little bit. I'd just like to say a few words about the music, although I could go on all day long. It's all Tchaikovsky, of course. We'll be doing half of the pieces found in the suite called The Seasons. This was a very interesting project that Tchaikovsky did one year when a music magazine, a monthly music magazine, commissioned Tchaikovsky to write pieces for their magazine that they would print inside of it once a month for a year. And so that was the genesis of this suite. And Tchaikovsky supposedly just kind of fired them off right under the deadline and sent them to the printers. And the magazine was then distributed all around Russia at the time. And so you can imagine it was exciting for people to open the magazine and see this new piece from Tchaikovsky and play it on their pianos in their parlors or wherever it was. That was great. So each one of these pieces depicts a little scene, kind of typical of the month. So January, we have a scene like we're sitting in front of a fireplace. Everything's very cozy and warm, and there's a kind of contrasting section where you can imagine the sparks of the fireplace flying up the chimney. February is carnival time, which is right now for us in our this time as well, so we can imagine what that's like. It's kind of the last time you get to have a lot of fun before Lent, and the music sounds like that. March is the Song of the Lark, and it's one of these wonderful melancholy Tchaikovsky pieces that's bittersweet. I think he's the master of being bittersweet. He had a very bittersweet life. April is snowdrops, and I don't know about your garden, but I live in Stanton, Virginia part-time, and there the snowdrops are up. They're the first flowers that come up, sometimes through the snow. I'm from Michigan, so I imagine them that they come up through the snow. They're kind of a real harbinger of spring after a long winter, and the music takes the form of a kind of very charming, fast waltz. May, thank you. I'm going back in time. May is called White Nights, and it has, if you're in a northern country, the winters are almost all dark, the summers are almost all light. So the White Nights are the times when even at midnight or 1 a.m., it looks like it's twilight, so it never really goes dark. So again, it's a time, it's kind of a nocturne type, a mysterious piece with a very kind of happy, joyful, contrasting section. And finally, June is a barcarolle, which originated, that kind of song form originated in Venice. It was what the gondoliers sang, so this went all over Europe at the time as a kind of boat song. So you can imagine going on an outing in a lake with this kind of gently rocking music going on. The other Tchaikovsky piece that we'll be playing is the waltz, famous waltz from The Sleeping Beauty, which was one of Tchaikovsky's big musical hits during his life. And if you'll permit me to stand on my little soapbox, I would, I would like to kind of tout the virtues of chamber music for a minute. I think today's program exemplifies a very special thing about chamber music. You know, chamber music sometimes gets a bad rap because it's usually viewed as something very exclusive, you know, kind of stuffy venues with, you know, very like rigid audience expectations about how you should hold still and dress a certain way. And then the music also, people think of chamber music tend to be very intellectual music like Brahms, or kind of thorny music like Bartók. But chamber music's roots and most of the music was written for pure enjoyment and sociability. And today's program is an example of that. Here we have all this wonderful music that was famous in the time, written for solo piano and for ballet orchestra, and it was all arranged for piano trio to be enjoyed at home with your friends in a kind of social environment. So I hope that you all will kind of join all of us with the pleasure of being here all together and in the pleasure of music making and in the pleasure of hearing beautiful words. And on that prompt, I'm going to ask Angela to come up. Angela is, we've worked together for many years on these concerts at the library. She's, we call her our curator of words at CMSCVA. So, Angela.
So when I heard that this would be an all Tchaikovsky concert, I knew I wanted to include an excerpt from Tolstoy's novella, Master and Man. Tchaikovsky and Tolstoy had mutual respect for each other's work, and they met for the first time in December of 1876 and talked at length about music, all kinds of music. And later, Tchaikovsky arranged a concert in honor of Tolstoy, and one of the pieces on that program was the Andante from Tchaikovsky's string quartet in D major, and this movement struck Tolstoy deeply, and Tchaikovsky later wrote in his diary, "Never in the whole course of my life did I feel so flattered, so proud of my creative power, as when Leo Tolstoy, sitting by my side, listened to my Andante while the tears streamed down his face." Isn't that nice? Like that picture there. The excerpt is not quite so pleasant. The novella Master and Man tells the story of Vasily Andreevich. And he's a landowner. He has his servant Nikita with him, and they have left the warmth and cheer of a farmhouse, which will be kind of represented by the music you'll hear for January and February. Vasily Andreevich is in a hurry to go buy a forest property before his competitors get there and get it from, take it away from him. And he unwisely decides to take Nikita and a horse and sledge out in the middle of a howling snowstorm. They get lost, then they stop they finally decide they need to stop for the night in this very slightly sheltered place. But around about 1 a.m., Vasily Andreevich decides he's going to unhitch the horse, and he rides away and leaves his servant alone in the snow. So that's from Master and Man. After March, we'll hear a few poems from the poet who actually recently died within the past year, Louise Gluck. And her book, The Wild Iris, unfolds over the span of almost a year, from March through the end of September. Some of the poems in the book are told in the voice of a human, some are in the voice of a creator, God, and some are in the voice of flowers, and we'll hear one of each from that book. Then we have an excerpt from the novel Germinal by Zola, and this is set in the coal mines of France in 1866. The novel follows the story of the newcomer Etienne, who starts working in the mines and then later leads an unsuccessful strike against the mining company. The excerpt comes from the very end of the book when he's leaving this mining town for new things, and we've got sunshine, we've got flowers, we've got hope for a new social order, but Zola also has this ambivalence in there, which I think is a very April kind of feeling, this in between seasons. And then to take us into summer, we have a poem from the American poet Arthur Z. His poem hints at the complexities of relationships we have to the earth, to each other, between nations. And then we'll end with, our last excerpt is a lovely celebratory poem by the poet Arthur Young, which just says hello to life's simple pleasures.
An excerpt from Master and Man by Leo Tolstoy. Vasily Andreevich urged Mukhorty on with his heels and the ends of the reins in the direction where, for some reason, he assumed the forest and Watchman's Hunt should be. The snow was blinding him, and the wind seemed to want to stop him, but he leaned forward, constantly pulling his fur coat close and tucking it between himself and the cold belly band that prevented him getting a proper grip, whipping Mukhorty on without respite. Obediently, but with difficulty, the horse went at an amble where he was told. For about 5 minutes, Vasily Andreevich rode in what seemed to him a straight line, seeing nothing except the horse's head and the white waist, and hearing nothing except the wind tearing past the horse's ears and the collar of his fur coat. Suddenly, something darkened in front of him. His heart leapt, and he rode toward the blackness, already seeing in it the walls of village houses. But the black thing wasn't stationary. It kept moving, and it wasn't a village, but some tall wormwood stalks sticking up through the snow in the rough ground between two fields, desperately tossing about under a wind that dashed them sideways, hissing through them. And for some reason, the sight of these weeds, mercilessly tormented by the wind, made Vasily Andreevich shudder, and he hurriedly began beating the horse on, not noticing that when he rode up to the clump of wormwood, he had changed tack completely and was now urging the horse in the opposite direction from before, still imagining that he was riding toward the place where the watchman's hut should be. But the horse kept pulling to the right, and so he kept pulling it to the left. Something grew dark in front of him again. He felt glad, sure that this time it really must be the village. But it was just another bit of scrub. For some reason, the dreadful shaking of the tall, dry weeds filled Vasily Andreevich with terror. It wasn't just that it was a very similar clump of wormwood. There were hoofprints beside it, drifting over with snow. Vasily Andreevich stopped, leaned over, and glanced at them. It was a horse track, lightly dusted with snow. There was no doubt it could only be his own. He was going around in a circle, and not a wide one either. "I'll perish like this," he thought, and to ward off his terror, he beat the horse on even more fiercely, peering into the white, snowy gloom in which little dots of light seemed to him to be sparkling, only to vanish when he looked at them. Once, he thought he heard dogs barking or wolves howling, but the sounds were so faint and indistinct, he couldn't be sure whether he had actually heard something or only imagined it. He stopped and started listening intently. Suddenly, a fearful, deafening cry broke out right beside him, and everything shuddered and trembled under him. Vasily Andreevich grabbed the horse's neck, but the horse's neck was all shaking too, and the terrible cry became even more horrifying. For some seconds, Vasily Andreevich couldn't come to himself or understand what was happening, but it was only McCourty, neighing in his loud, resonant voice, either trying to cheer himself up or calling for help. "Bloody brute! You terrified the life out of me, damn you," Vasily Andreevich said to himself. But even when he understood the reason for his terror, he couldn't shake it off. "I must stop and think. I must calm down," he kept saying to himself, and at the same time couldn't stop himself beating the horse on, not noticing that now they were going with the wind rather than against it. His body was frozen and painful, especially his thighs, which were unprotected and rubbed against the brass-studded belly band. His feet and hands trembled, and his breathing came in great jerks. Suddenly, the horse gave way under him. It was caught in a snowdrift, thrashing about and keeling over sideways. Vasily Andreevich tumbled off, yanking the breeching strap which had supported his leg and pulling to one side the belly band he had been holding on to. The minute Vasily Andreevich was off his back, The horse righted himself, strained, lunged, and leapt. Neighing again, dragging the flapping sacking and belly band behind him, he vanished from sight, leaving Vasily Andreevich alone in the snowdrift. Vasily Andreevich flung himself after him, but the snow was so deep and his fur coats were so heavy, he sank in up to his knees at every step. After 20 steps at the most, he stopped, breathless. The forest, the sheep, the leaseholds, the shop, the taverns, the house and barn and their iron roofs, my heir, he thought. What will become of them all? How can this be? It can't be, flashed through his mind. For some reason, he remembered the wormwood he had twice ridden past, thrashing in the wind, and such horror came over him he couldn't believe what was happening to him was real. Isn't this all a dream, he thought, and wanted to wake up, but there was no way of waking. This was real snow, stinging his face, covering him, and chilling his right hand, whose glove he had lost. Matin. Forgive me if I say I love you. The powerful are always lied to, since the weak are always driven by panic. I cannot love what I can't conceive, and you disclose virtually nothing. Are you like the hawthorn tree, always the same thing in the same place? Or are you more the foxglove, inconsistent, first springing up a pink spike on the slope behind the daisies, and the next year, purple in the rose garden? You must see it is useless to us, this silence that promotes belief you must be all things, the foxglove and the hawthorn tree, the vulnerable rose and tough daisy. We are left to think you couldn't possibly exist. Is this what you mean us to think? Does this explain the silence of the morning, the crickets not yet rubbing their wings, the cats not fighting in the yard. End of winter. Over the still world, a bird calls, waking solitary among black boughs. You wanted to be born. I let you be born. When has my grief ever gotten in the way of your pleasure? Plunging ahead into the dark and light at the same time, eager for sensation as though you were some new thing, wanting to express yourselves, all brilliance, all vivacity, never thinking this would cost you anything, never imagining the sound of my voice as anything but part of you. You won't hear it in the other world, not clearly again, nor in bird call or human cry, not the clear sound, only persistent echoing in all sound that means goodbye, goodbye. The one continuous line that binds us to each other. Snowdrops. Do you know what I was? How I lived? You know what despair is. Then winter should have meaning for you. I did not expect to survive, earth suppressing me. I didn't expect to waken again, to feel in damp earth my body able to respond again, remembering after so long how to open again in the cold light of earliest spring. Afraid, yes, but among you again. Crying, yes. Risk, joy in the raw wind of the new world. An excerpt from Germinal by Émile Zola. The cool April night was warming with the coming of day. Out on the highway, Etienne walked for a while, deep in thought. All sorts of ideas were racing through his mind, but above all, he felt the pleasure of the fresh air and the open sky, and he took deep breaths. The sun was rising gloriously on the horizon, stirring the countryside to a joyful awakening. A tide of gold was sweeping over the immense plain from east to west as the warmth of life took hold, spreading out in a tremulous wave of vibrant newness and youth that mingled the sighs of the earth, the songs of the birds, and every murmur and whisper of stream and wood. It was good to be alive. The old world wanted to see another spring. Filled with this spirit of hope, Etienne slowed his pace, gazing absently to left and right, taking in the gaiety of the new season. He thought about himself, and he felt strong, matured by his hard times down the pit. His education was complete, and he was leaving newly armed, a philosopher-soldier of the revolution, having declared war on the society he saw around him and condemned. In his delight at going to join Pluchart, at going to be Pluchart, a leader who was listened to, he started making speeches to himself, rehearsing the phrases as he went. He considered how he might broaden his program of objectives, for the bourgeois refinement that had taken him out of his own class had now made him hate the bourgeoisie even more. Discomfited by the workers' reek of poverty, he felt the need to raise them up to glory and set a halo on their heads. He would show how they alone among human beings were great and unimpeachably pure, the sole font of nobility and strength from which humanity at large might draw the means of its own renewal. Already, he could see himself addressing the assembly, sharing in the triumph of the people, if the people didn't destroy him first. High above him, he heard a lark singing, and he looked up at the sky. Tiny red clouds, the lingering mists of the night, were melting into limpid blue. And in his mind's eye, the vague figures of Souvarine and Rasseneur appeared before him. It was clear that everything went wrong when people tried to gain power for themselves. Hence the failure of this famous international of theirs, which was supposed to have changed the world, but which was now weak and impotent because its formidable army of supporters had been divided and fragmented by internal squabbing. Etienne turned left along the road to Joiselle. This, he remembered, was where he had stopped the mob from attacking the Gaston-Marie mine. Far away in the clear morning light, he could make out the headgears of several mines. Everywhere things were humming, and the picks he thought he could hear beneath the ground were tapping away from one end of the plain to the other. Tap, tap, over and over again, under the fields and roads and villages that lay basking in the light. A whole world of people laboring unseen in this underground prison, so deep beneath the enormous mass of rock that you had to know they were there if you were to sense the great wave of misery rising from them. And he began to wonder whether all the violence had really helped their cause. The smashed lamps and the severed cables and the torn up rails, how pointless it had all been. What good had it done to go rushing around in a mob of 3,000 people destroying everything in sight? Dimly, he foresaw that one day the law might provide a more terrible and powerful weapon. His thinking was maturing. He had got the wild rage of grievance out of his system. Yes, La Maheude had been right in her usual sensible way. Next time, they would show him. They would organize themselves calmly and without haste. They would make sure they understood each other, and they would band together in unions as soon as the law allowed it. Then one morning, there they would be, millions upon millions of workers standing shoulder to shoulder against a few thousand idle rich. And that day they would take power and become the masters. Ah, what a dawn that would be, the new dawn of truth and justice. It would mean the instant demise of that squat and sated deity, that monstrous idol hidden away in the depths of its temple, in that secret faraway place where it fed on the flesh of poor wretches who had never even set eyes upon it. But Etienne was now leaving the Vendôme road and coming out onto the cobbled highway. He had better hurry if he wanted to catch the 8 o'clock train, because he still had 6 kilometers to go. And far beneath his feet, the stubborn tap, tap of the picks continued. The comrades were all there. He could hear them following him with each stride he took. Wasn't that Lama Heard beneath his field of beet, bent double at her work, her rasping breaths audible above the roar of the ventilating machine? On the left, on the right, ahead of him, he thought he recognized others, there beneath the corn and the hedges and the young trees. The risen April sun now shone from the sky in all its glory, warming the parturient earth. Life was spring from her fertile bosom, with buds bursting into verdant leaf, and the fields stretching, cracking the plain open in their quest for warmth and light. Sap was brimming in an urgent whisper. Shoots were sprouting with the sound of a kiss. And still, again and again, even more distinctly than before, as if they had been working their way closer to the surface, the comrades tapped and tapped. Midsummer. Tiger swallowtails hover over Russian sage. I smell eucalyptus where there is no eucalyptus, and locate summer in rain. Like bats emerging out of a cave at dusk, a thread of grief unfurls in the sky. Neither you nor I can stop the planting of mines in a field or the next detonation. I unclog a drip line along a fence. In May, lilacs arced over the road in a cascade of purple blossoms. Now, stilled in a minute of darkness, I listen to bamboo leaves unfurl above into sunshine. Untangling a necklace composed of interlocking gold chains, then lifting it, I trace joy, fear, bewilderment, bliss, a this resplendent in my fingertips. I slip inside a strawberry runner that extends root, leaf, then stand in morning starlight and inhabit a song. and everyone working the drive-thru is beautiful, smiling just like the commercial. Thanks, I will have a good day, and a double cheeseburger too. And without complaint, the birds wake you early, sun against the skin, somewhere smell of a grill, cut grass, and gasoline. And the church lady, her hat, a bouquet, saying, hello, hello. The sun, a giant melon, and we're not getting any younger, but today, no older either. And why not live forever? Why not wait till tomorrow to pay the phone, the gas, electric? Why not pray for a tie instead of a win, for the game to go long, on and on, a million innings?